Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today I'm going to show you the update for the Homestead patch for my Stamina Dragon Knight based on the previous Infused DK build from last patch. Not much has changed, but what has changed I will touch upon, and you'll be able to see the new CPs and what gear options and skill changes you may or may not need to do depending on the situation. So let's get straight into it. We'll start off with the stats I'll pop a potion actually. We are on not far short of 4k weapon damage, almost 65% crit, 20.5k health, 38.5k stamina, and 900-ish recovery. So resist, but we'll cover that. All points are into stamina. I have been biting somebody. I'm a vampire, obviously, but we'll go over those skills as well and why they're important. And I'm using 2 Mundus stones, which obviously for most of you, if you understand this, means I'm using twice spawn. The twice spawn star set, which I'll show you in a second. And with the patch they gave us these stats now, so we can actually see how these Mundus stones are affecting us. And as you can see quite clearly, there's an 18% crit damage increase, which people thought was nerfed, and it's not. So vampire, all stamina, and we'll get to the race and everything in a minute. Skills. We are using the typical setup, same as before mostly, but there are a couple of alterations that I will touch on. First of all is Venomous Claw, the most powerful single target DK dot that there is, and it gets progressively stronger the longer it is on, so you must make sure that this runs its full duration. Second is Rearm and Trap, which is a morph, of Beast Trap. This basically we use it is a powerful dot, but we use it for the crit bonus we get when it's active. Now it will fire off, and it will last X amount of seconds, I think 6, let me just double check that. 6 seconds, immobilizes the enemy or not if they're immune to it, and while it's active it does damage and gives you 10% increased crit damage. Then when it's gone it rearms, so you get it for a full duration of 12 seconds. So on a 10-second rotation, as long as you apply it properly, that will stay up 100% of the time, always increasing your damage. That's why we use that. Evil Hunter, I primarily use this for pretty much 2 reasons. The first one is for the crit bonus, which is at the bottom there, Major Savagery. Secondly is for the Fighters Guild passives, which turns my weapon damage into a little bit higher than it should be, because it gives you a bonus for having a Fighters Guild skill slotted, which I'll show you the passives in a moment. Bloodthirst, this is the alternative morph of Flurry. Instead of Rapid Strikes, I use this. If you're a Stamina Sorcerer, for example, you probably have, or you should have, Crit Surge running most of the time, which means you heal from your crit damage, so you don't need this. DKs do not. They're squishy as hell. They don't use a resist buff all the time, like the Sorcerer does. They don't heal like the Sorcerer does. This will keep you up the more you keep up your rotation. So while you're stabbing things, this will heal you. As long as the last hit of this attack connects, you will heal for 60% of the damage. Now, if you don't crit that last hit, you can crit heal it. So it's very strong. The other skill from the dual wield is of course Blood Craze. Now some people would like to use Rend and Slashes, which is pretty much the same. In fact the dot is identical, but the initial hit is stronger on Rend and Slashes. However, if you're not worried about that one hit and you just want to keep the consistent damage up, this is fine, and it also heals you once every 2 seconds as well. It's like the dual wield equivalent of Rally, except you don't get the big burst heal. So it's a nice heal over time. Flawless Stormbreaker. We don't use this unless we're short of resources, or if the fight is almost over and you just want to finish it off. Apart from that, the main reason we use it is because while it's slotted, it gives us 5% increased weapon damage, and a further 3% from the Fighters Guild passives, which I've already said I'll get to again in a moment. On the back bar, we use Resolving Vigor, which is the second morph of Vigor. It's the more powerful one for you, and it obviously heals other people as well. Poison Injection, which is a morph of Poison Arrow. This is a very powerful single target death over time or damage over time ability. But it's not just used for execute. If you read at the bottom, it says that the damage over time deals up to 260% more damage to enemies under 50% health. So yes, it gets progressively stronger, but it's still really, really powerful all the time while you're using it, so keep that up as well. Noxus Breath, AoE in a cone in front of you, Poison Dot, that affects everything it hits basically, and also puts Major Fracture on them, which reduces their physical resistance, meaning you do more damage to them. Generally, the tank, if they're using Pierce Armor or Ransack, will have this already applied to a boss, but in big ad situations where there's multiple things to hit, you can weaken them all at once. But this skill can be altered and changed for another one, which I'll get to in a second also. Ignis Shields. This is really, really powerful. The passives, again, is along with the fighter skill I will get to. But if you activate it, it doesn't just give you a very nice shield for yourself, and obviously, as you know, most stamina classes don't have shields, but you do. Even though it's smaller than a Magicka shield, it's still a shield nonetheless, and it shields a group as well for a small amount. But when you fire it, it gives you 25% increased healing done. Now that includes Vigor, so that will get more powerful. So if you fire this off and put Vigor on, that's now stronger. Instead of 11k, it's 15. By the time you switch to your front bar, let's highlight this here. Where is Assault? Here we are. So on the front bar, it's supposed to do 13k. So we'll pop this, fire it. Now it does nearly 17k, not including crits. Really, really powerful. So Vigor's nice. Ignis Shield helps boost your heals. Also, you'll notice that this has a set amount. It will heal you for 60% of the damage done on the last hit. Now, if you pop Ignis Shields first, and then do a Rapid Strikes, or whatever you want to call it, Blood Craze. Oops, try again. Stuck in my skills. 75% of the last hit. So it increases this as well. So the more you do your damage, the more you'll heal. And if you pop this before you go to the front bar and you're doing some stabs, you heal off of them. So every time you do your back bar stuff, you finish this, finish with the Ignis and swap bar, and start stabbing and you'll heal for more. That's situational, but a very handy tip to know. Also, the same applies for this skill. Blood Craze, 1135 every 2 seconds while the dot is active. When that's on, for 6 seconds worth of that, it's 1418 before crits. So Ignis Shield is very, very powerful. Now, the ultimate that we use on the back, but oh sorry, we need this. Endless Hail, really, really powerful. Small area of effect, death over time, that ticks every half a second. Not every 1 second or 2 seconds, every half a second. And it gets progressively stronger with the Maelstrom bow. We'll get to when we get to gear. Fire it in that much room. You don't get too much, but that's how much area of effect you get. Lasts for 10 seconds, really powerful. While it's on, you want to be on your front bar as much as possible because you get more damage out of it. Again, we'll get to that. Last one is the ultimate on the back bar, which is Standard of Might. This did get a nerf on the last patch, but not really that much. It used to be 20% damage reduction and 20% damage increase for incoming and outgoing, but it's been nerfed to 15, but it's still really, really strong. Defiles any targets in there, reducing their healing received. There's a decent amount of flame damage, which can tick, lasts for 17 seconds. While you're inside of it, any damage you receive is reduced by 15%. So also, you do an additional 15% damage. So all the damage that you've already applied, all the damage that you're about to apply, as long as it's running or reactivated, whatever, it increases that. So if you've already got dots down and you put this down, anything that's already running is stronger. Anything you now add is stronger, and it lasts as long as the ultimate does. The synergy is very, very nice. If someone pops that, it needs to stand within 2 or 3 meters of you to activate the synergy. Every single target in range will have a chain attached to it, and as long as it's not immune to it, it can be immobilized and they receive quite a large amount of damage. So that's very, very nice. Now, we're going to get to the passives because our skill set's already set. No, we're not. We're going to do one more thing. Here, in certain trials and dungeons, you're going to be receiving quite a lot of area of effect damage. Now, what you can do is you can take this off and you can replace it in the dual wield skills with Deadly Cloak. And what this does is a reasonable amount of damage every 3 seconds for 15 seconds, but that's irrelevant. What you need this for is the bottom part of the skill, which is it basically shields you from incoming damage. 20% of all area of effect attacks. So Sanctum, poison and stuff like that, or area of effect abilities, like red circles that you accidentally stand in or deliberately get put in, anything basically that is an area of effect ability, you reduce the incoming damage by 20%. So it makes you a bit tankier to that. So it's a very good skill to use, especially in trials. The other skill you can switch out if this is no good to you, and if there's a situation where you want to perhaps snare a certain amount of enemies, or just have some decent DPS going on because this debuff is already on the boss, then you can switch this to Razor Caltrops. But instead of every 1 rotation, you put it down every 3, so it saves you a lot of stamina and it lasts a very long time anyway. But this does damage every 1 second, quite a lot in fact, and snares enemies for 70%. So just as an example, in the last corridor in More of Lorcage, when the tanks are trying to control the savages and all the bombers are running towards the tanks, this will slow them down and give them a little bit more time to figure out where everything is, as well as doing a decent amount of damage. But that's a choice, you don't have to do that, that's just situational. One or the other, it's up to you. Now, passives. We'll make this one quick. Oh, you need to get this, because sometimes you need to chain things, but that's for later. Get all of these. You can go through them in your own time, and I'll also put the details up on the website once that's live. But you basically need every single passive in here to make the most out of all of your skills, including status effects, overall damage, all that kind of stuff for this skill line, which you are using quite a lot because your main 2 dots are in there, and so is your ultimate. So it's very important to get those. Draconic Power. This isn't hugely essential because you don't really use these very often, apart from possibly PvP or if you're a tank. But I would recommend getting them all because, I mean, this one is probably not that important because you're not using the Draconic Power ability. So that won't apply, but in case you are, in case you put resist buff on, that can help. Also increases your health recovery while you have one slotted. That probably won't help you either unless you put one on, which at the moment we're not. So again, not so important. But this is. Increases your spell resistance by 3k, 3.5 almost, and reduces the amount of damage you take when you block. You do block, and you do get hit. So you need both of these two above all the rest. Earth and Heart, these are the big ones. That's for Maelstrom if you get stuck. This is your Major Sorcery and Major Brutality buff for you and 6 other members. You can use that instead of Igneous Shield if you want, but if you want to make the most out of your heals and shields and all the rest of it, use Igneous instead and get this buff from potions. Now, these are important. Increases duration of your Earth and Heart abilities. That includes your Igneous Shields. Big one. When you cast an ultimate ability, you restore 28 health, 19 magicka, and 67 stamina for each point of ultimate cost. Now that fluctuates in actual amount of points you've got there, depending on whether you're magic or stamina or health, but that basically means that you can pretty much fill your bars based on your ultimate cost. So the more expensive the ultimate, the more stuff you get back, and that's how you manage your sustain. This one, also very valid for Igneous Shields. When you fire it, you get minor brutality for 20 seconds. So not just do you give yourself a shield, or also healing increased for a few seconds, you also increase yours and up to 6 people's weapon damage by 5% for 20 seconds, which is pretty damn nice. Also, if you're in combat, every time you press Igneous Shields, up to a minimum of once every 6 seconds, you'll gain 3 ultimate as well. So Igneous Shields is doing its job here. It gives you a buff, it gives you ultimate, it gives you increased healing, it gives you a shield. Then the big one, it also gives you 5% of your max stamina back. Very simple to explain this one. Waste some stamina, hold block so we don't generate anymore. You don't get stamina back while you're blocking, but Igneous Shields fills your stamina up. So if you're in a jam, have some of that. Very, very nice. Other important passives. First of all, dual wield. This is a no-brainer, but you can read through them in your own time. They're all very important, but get every single passive. Every single one. The reason we're using an axe and a dagger, by the way, is because the axe can bleed and the dagger increases crit, so we have one of each. Very, very, very powerful dot on the bleed, by the way. It is an 8% chance, but it does proc a lot, and it was also empowered by the Maelstrom weapons, so it will be much, much stronger than that. Bow, again, get everything. You only need these 2 skills, Endless Hail and Poison Injection, which is Volley and Poison Arrow, but make sure you get all of these skills. Very, very important for sustain, for your maneuverability, and of course your damage. Don't need any of these. Light armor, if you're going to optimize, get these 3. Help with resistances. Recovery, you will need recovery because you want to use your Igneous Shield as much as you possibly can, even though you're very, very low magicka. It's just handy to have. And also reduces the cost. Pretty good. Heavy armor, again, I've got all of these, but you don't need them. It's just because sometimes they play the tank role in this character. But generally, 1, 2, and 3. The first 3 skill lines. 1 is resistance, again. The next is health recovery, which is not that important, but you also restore magicka, stamina, and when you get hit, once every 4 seconds. Very small amount, but everything counts, especially if you've got the spare skill points. And then 2% max health for having 1 piece of heavy armor, which is very good. Okay, also don't forget to get your medium armor skills. These are very important because we're wearing 5 medium. I did mention earlier about 5-1-1. That's 5 medium, 1 heavy, 1 light for Undaunted passives, which I'm coming to. We are using 5 medium, so make sure that you do get all of these, including these ones which require, or this one specifically, which requires 5 pieces. So weapon damage, reduction to dodge roll cost, increased movement speed, reduction to sneak and detection speed. It's okay, you use that for steel and stuff or PvP. This is important, increases your stamina recovery based on how many pieces you're wearing, and your reduction to cost, and also increases your crit. So these are very, very important. Also Fighters Guild, we must get those. Where are they gone? I'm blind. Where's Fighters Guild? Gone past it. There it is. I do slot this occasionally for damage reduction for me and the group if they're close by. Also increases stamina recovery for people if they need it, and I put that in place of Vigor if Vigor is not required, but I generally do use Vigor quite a lot, so this isn't always there. But it's handy because you do have a lot of stamina and you can put this down over other people. But if not, maybe the tank will use it. It's up to you. It's situational. Evil Hunter is what we're using, obviously, as we mentioned already. It's the crit we use, and this we use for the 10% crit damage and the small dot that comes with it. Now, while these are on the bar, you get this. Switch bars. Increases the weapon damage by 3% for each Fighters Guild ability slotted. Beast Trap, 3%, Evil Hunter, 3%, and Dawnbreaker gives you 5%. But because it's a Fighters Guild ability and it is slotted, you still receive the additional 3%. So that is why we have 9% extra weapon damage on our front bar. Also, if this is on your back bar, that counts as one also, and that will give you a further 3% while on your back bar, which is quite helpful if you choose to play that way. You don't have to, you can just keep Vigor on and it's fine. Now, this one also, you need to have this because it increases your ultimate generation depending on the target you're up against. So if you kill undead or Daedra or werewolves, 9 ultimate for every kill. So if you're killing loads of zombies, you've got ultimate coming at you left, right and centre, and your sustain is going to be awesome. Your Fighter's Guild's ability deal 20% more damage to undead, Daedra and werewolves. So your Beast Trap is stronger, so is your Dawnbreaker, that kind of stuff. This is also important, not just for the intimidating part for quests, so you can skip parts, but it also reduces the cost of your Fighter's Guild abilities. So you're going to be using this every rotation, which isn't cheap, but with that skill it's cheaper, so that also affects your sustain. Mage's Guild isn't really that important, so I wouldn't worry about those. Don't worry about those. These are very important. Undaunted 9, get it as soon as you possibly can. 4% resources, all 3 resources, magicka, stamina, health. That's what you get back every time you pop a synergy, so hit those bloody synergies. Then you have this, 2% health, stamina and magic for each type of armor worn or equipped. I have 3 different types of armor which we're getting to, which we call 5-1-1. 5 being the main armor that you wear, 5 of them, 5 pieces. Then the 1-1 is one of one that you wouldn't normally use and one of another. So in this case we're using medium, so we use 5 medium, then we use 1 heavy and 1 light. And with that, because we've got 3 different versions of armor on, or 3 different types even, 2% of each. 6% stats, which increases our sustain, our damage, and our survivability. Assault, already been here. We've got vigor. These are for PvP, so ignore them unless you go into PvP. That's a separate subject. Same applies with support. Don't worry about those. 2 more skill lines to go through. First of all, we are Imperial. Make sure you max these out as soon as possible. 12% increased max health. That's really nice as a stamina DPS because you're not squishy. In fact, you're not far off of a tank once you get a Warhorn and Ebon, which is insane. And increases your max stamina by 10%. That is the highest stamina bonus you will get from any race. Redguard is identical to that, although their sustain is different. But they don't get this, the big health bonus. Then we have this. Your melee attacks have a 10% chance to restore 6% of your max health. We use light attacks between every skill. That can keep us alive. Also, food ran out. If you use Ignis Shields first, that 6% turns into 7%. So that's a really powerful skill. Stand back, ultimate gain, shield, increased heals, all that kind of stuff is nuts, and it affects every type of heal you do. Bloodthirst, rend and slashes, well, the blood craze morph, your vigor, and your light attacks. I think it's just attacks in general, actually. Melee attacks, so light and heavy from your front bar. Last skill line, really important. Medicinal use. Get this as soon as possible. I'll post a video very shortly about how to level this up real quick, 10 minutes flat. Then you just dump all your skills, but you need this because it improves the time of your potion's duration. Meaning stuff like this, which is essential. Where's my potions? Supplies, slottable items. Here we go. Potions here. Major brutality, increasing your weapon damage. 47 seconds. Increases your recovery, increases your crit, blah blah, all the usual stuff. There's loads of different potions that do all the different types of things, but for this specifically I'm showing you this one. But they all have a duration on them. Normally 20 to 30 seconds or so of their trash pots, which is an example here, 28 seconds, cooldown 45. These, 47.6 seconds, cooldown 45. With that skill line, your potions have 100% uptime and you can reapply them before they run out. Very handy. Now, next is the CPs, and then we're going to go into the gear, and then I'm going to show you a very quick skeleton smack about, and we'll be done. Where are we? Champion points. These are not set in stone, they can change, but 80 in hardy, 80 in elemental defender, 30 in thick skinned. Gives you a really nice resist across the board, and before you hit too many diminished returns by going too high in this tree or this tree, you then plug the gap by any dot damage you may take in these forms, which is quite a lot of the time. So that's a very nice balance. Depending on the fight you can change them out, but all round, especially in Maelstrom and stuff like that, this is absolutely fine. It makes you quite tanky as well, especially along with the 20k health we've got. These are not hugely essential, but you do get this one, which is basically when you break from a stun or anything like that, your next ability is reduced by 80% for 5 seconds. So if you have to break from something, throw a caltrops, it's cheap as hell. 10 points in recovery. This is to increase the heals that you receive, including the ones that you do, including the ones that your damage does as well. And then above all, this is one of my favorite skills, reduces the damage received while resurrecting another player. So while you're rezzing people, and you should be, if someone goes down, don't leave it to everybody else, you take less damage while doing so. Very important. Nope, next tree. 100 in Warlord, 16% stamina cost reduction, and also 100 in here, increases your recovery by 25%. You can go 80 here, 20 in here, but I've been using it without tenacity recently and it's absolutely fine. Don't worry about that. Or that. Or that. This one, 24 in precise strikes, 26 into physical penetration in piercing, 75 mighty, 75 thermaturge. Now, this can go up a bit and this can go down a bit, but they end up balancing out to be roughly the same. So before you hit, again, diminished returns past 75, pump them into here instead. You're doing shit tons of dot damage. Everything you do is a death over time. You may as well balance these out. And I've messed with them to a stupid extent, to the point where I'm now very, very comfortable with them, and any other alterations I've done to them were actually less damage. So this has come out on top so far. And of course you get all the shiny stuff as well. Every passive in this tree you get. Next, gear. That's what you want to know. Okay, so we're using Maelstrom Axe infused, so it gives us higher weapon damage, and of course if every time you use Flurry, which in this case is Bloodthirst, your next single target death over time ability is increased with a further 2.4k weapon and spell damage. Has to be a single target one though. Now this has a 50% chance to trigger per weapon. We have two. One is an axe, one is a dagger, one for the bleed, one for the crit. Again, 113 extra weapon damage for holding it, and it does 2.4k additional weapon damage to your single target dots. 50% per weapon means it happens 100% of the time. And it's infused on purpose. We do a lot of death over time damage, and we need to boost that as much as possible. Infused weapons increases this weapon's enchant by 20%. So instead of 2k, it's 2.4k, which is bloody strong. And also, I know people like precise and sharpened, but with this particular build, this comes out on top because your penetration is already covered by the armor sets and the skill sets that you're using. Now, we use a sharpened bow on the back. I said earlier that this increases volley, and it does. It gets progressively stronger per half-second tick, and adds weapon damage for using it. The reason we use sharpened is because while you're on the back bar, you want to increase your penetration and have more damage. Now, infused doesn't work the way you would like it to. Infused on the bow would increase the enchant's damage or potential damage output, but as soon as you switch to your front bar, you lose it. However, while using this, you do more damage on the back bar because you penetrate more through the enemy's resists. Then when you switch to the front bar, because you're holding infused weapons, this enchant is treated as infused if volley is already running. So basically you have 3 infused weapons, so your damage output is very, very high. Now, the way we counter the loss for the sharpened and the precise, as most people would generally use, is that we're using 5-piece 2-fang snake. Just like we were last patch, we're using it still again here. Gives you 1000 penetration for 3 seconds, stacking up 5 times while you do damage. Each time you hit, it increases by 1000. It doesn't just last for 3 seconds. It lasts for as long as you're still doing damage, so long as you apply damage at least once every 3 seconds. So this ticks every half a second. So 1, 2, 2.5 if you like. It's hit its full potential already. As long as you keep that running, you're not going to run out of that buff. This runs every half second. You need to do damage every 3 seconds at least. So you can keep that up 100% of the time, which gives you a flat 5k penetration, along with this skill, unless the tank's already using it, which gives you again another 5k penetration, so you're hitting 10k already. Then we have 1.5 in the champion points. You're hitting 11.5, nearly 12k penetration, way before any other buffs are applied, including stuff like Owlkosh, Thunderflame, all these different types of debuffs that push the enemy over the edge and lower them down to almost 0 resists. You've already got a good buffer. Now, let's find the other part. We're using 5 here anyway. We're using 1 on the hands, which isn't essential. Obviously, just make sure it's one of your medium slots. 1 on the feet, which gives us weapon damage, stamina, and crit. And then the 5th bonus, obviously. And the 3 jewelry, all enchanted with weapon damage, so we can get the most out of that. Now the other 5-piece is, no, I'm not wearing a monster set, is a Twice-Born Star. Max health, max stamina, and max magic. Now this allows you to have 2 Mundus stones at a time, which is why we have the Thief, which improves our crit based on how many Divines pieces we have, and the Shadow, which increases our crit damage, which you saw at the beginning is actually 18% flat all the time. So we have 18%, where is it, crit damage here when we use the Beast Trap. We have another 10% here, and then in our champion points we have the wrong tree. Come on, we have a further 9% here. So our crit damage, like when we do crit, is very, very high, and that's way before a Warhorn is even fired. Now I know there's an argument out there saying Twiceborn got nerfed because of Warhorns. That is quite possibly one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Everybody benefits from a Warhorn. Everybody gets that crit damage bonus whether they are wearing Twiceborn or not. The only difference is, if you're using Twiceborn with the Thief and the Shadow, you already have a head start on crit damage before the Warhorn is fired. So your stack and bonus is actually more effective than theirs. However, it does depend on what you're wearing alongside Twiceborn. Twiceborn isn't a beginner's set. You must have a good complementary set to go beside it. In terms of this, we're using the Two-Fanged Snake. You have to have at least one crit bonus. Otherwise, your Thief Stone is going to be too weak and it's a waste of time and you'll just lose damage. You must have at least one crit. If you can get two, fine. But you must have one, at least. Otherwise, you'll be too low, you'll be under 65%, or under 64, 60, possibly even 60. And you won't get enough DPS. 64 to 70% crit is just fine. Anything under that, you may as well change your sets. But this has been messed with, tested, and I'll show you what you can get out of it solo, and obviously you can do the maths on what you can get out of it in a trial. So, let's move on to Smack a Skelly. Take into account, obviously, the Skellies are not a 100% cert gauge for DPS, because the situations are always different in a trial or a dungeon or even solo. The enemy can be knocked off balance or stunned, or it could be dancing around the room, or you could have certain buffs on, etc, etc, etc. But this is a good way to practice, and I can show you single target with messing around with a few skills what your potential is in terms of overall damage for yourself. So here we go. Whoa. So, hopefully that wasn't too boring. I know it's a little bit long, but this has been tested for a very long time, and I want to make sure all the details are in place. If you do have any questions, please put them at the comment section below. We have some new things coming up soon. Like I said already, the Mag DK is coming. I'm just getting Major Skilled with it. It's taken really, really long. And I had to farm 4 days solid for a stupid staff that I wanted, but it was worth it in the end. And also, coming up, we're about to hit 2,000 subscribers, which I did promise that once I hit 2,000, again, there will be a giveaway. And that's going to happen. We're going to have names in the hat, we'll use a random generator, and we will give away a very shiny prize. Last time it was 2 willpower swords in gold, appropriately glyphed, and it was given away at random by a small competition on my channel. Now this time the prize is going to be considerably larger, mostly... No, I'm not going to tell you anything. It's coming. Just keep your eyes peeled. As soon as we hit that 2k, the video is going up. Everyone is able to take part in it, although the prize will be given away for PS4 EU server. Unfortunately, I don't have Zoskais and all that kind of stuff. I actually have to farm this myself, I have to get the pieces myself, and I have to give it to you myself. So unless I played it on 3 different platforms on 6 different servers, that wouldn't be... it's not doable. But it's on the PS4 EU, and prizes on other servers will come in the future. once I've played more on those platforms. So once again, thank you all very much for watching. Please do hit that subscribe button, it is free. Any questions that I've already said, please ask me below. I will try to get back to everybody if I can. Also, as I've said in the previous video, I believe, if not, I'm letting you know now, there is a website in development. After the 2K subscribers, I will also be releasing that as well. So once again, thank you very much and goodbye.